Good morning, Simon, my good friend. How you doing today?
Thank you. Lovely to see you. And we're fine in ourselves, but we had a heck of a job getting on to speak to you today. And I just remind people outside of Britain that last week in England and in Wales, many millions of people lost their email. I mean, the servers down. So, and I've been with this company for 20 years and I've never known it. And it literally went down. And since then, Steve, communications in Britain have been off and on.
It's clogged and off and on, huh?
Yeah, so we're working now, and I can never be sure quite what the issues are, but I did think I wasn't going to be able to get on and speak to you today. So thank you for persevering, and thank you for sending the link about five different ways.
No problem, my friend. I'm so excited to get to talk to you. It's been a good 2 weeks. And lots happening in the world. So, hey, I know you do a kind of a daily update. So give me some insight on what's going on. And we'll share this with the folks that listen to you and I speak. Last week we did over 200,000 folks jumped on to see what we were doing. So that's really exciting for both of us to be able to get our messaging out there. So what do you think? We got missionaries kidnapped in Haiti. We got Biden can't get a bill through Congress. We've got all sorts of cool stuff happening in the States. So give us an idea what's going on in the world and what we should be doing.
Okay, well, you and I both sort of sing from the same hymn book. But let's not forget that Biden is destroying your country, and that's clear. But there's a great deal that's occurring which gives all patriots hope, and not false hope, but real hope. And that is simply that in over 200 countries, the local military have decided that they no longer want to have a government imposed on them that was there illegally or evilly. And so it's not just America that is seeing action now, it's right across the board. And I did do a little update myself yesterday, and I talked about how our members in different countries were actually personally feeding us through, saying we're seeing soldiers not just on the street, because that's not that unusual, but knocking on doors and warning residents on certain days of the week to stay indoors. And I will just repeat it, Steve, because you won't have picked it up. In New Zealand, we have a very strong, as we do in Australia, we have a very strong connecting consciousness group and a management team, and members were alerting us that soldiers were actually knocking on people's doors in the block and saying to them to stay in on a set date. And I said, I'm not going to give that date because that's, could get us in trouble, but to stay indoors on a set date. They were going to hear gunfire, explosions, and children screaming, and they had to stay indoors. So these are soldiers, not police, soldiers knocking on people's doors in a neighborhood, telling them that. So of course that comes straight back to me via my coordinators. Now, why this is important is that this isn't people on drugs making stories up. This isn't people wanting television news. These are people on anonymity, don't give my name, but and we know they're members. Some of them I've spoken to myself, so we know it's absolutely genuine. We know that there are American soldiers now landing in Africa. We've had reports from our members in Africa that American soldiers are releasing children who are held in captivity in some part of Africa. We've got Italian, French, German troops in other countries also in operations. Now the Pentagon and contact I have both said to me that they were ready now for the second military phase. And this is a military phase that was no longer covert, it was overt, and not just ships on the sea or aeroplanes in the air, because that doesn't actually mean much to us. But it's like you go home after your work and you've got military vehicles on a street that's just a suburban street. So these are positive things. And what I wanted to say, Steve, is that it's not the deep state, it's not the cabal, it's not the New World Order. This is the real government making sure that those bad guys don't take over, because that's what they wanted. The bad guys take over. So what's happened is that the good guys have beat them to it. And that's where we are with it. So there's a lot that's going to be happening the remainder of this week and the following week, which we should see more in our eyes. And remember that the White House was lit up with red light, and now where the Queen used to live in Buckingham Palace, that was lit up with green light. So you have two iconic buildings. One is red lit at night and one is green lit at night. And this very much follows what Q has been posting. So anybody who's completely stupid will look at these buildings and think, well, why are they lit up like that? And B, how come Q was writing about this a long time ago? So I think there are some pretty stupid people who are now having to wake up and become intelligent people. I just wanted to quickly go back to something, Steve. There's always a fallout when a person predicts. About maybe 2015, 2016, there were a spate of bomb explosions in European and Scandinavian cities. I think Belgium got hit and other countries. And there was a lot of talk about particular cities that were going to be hit. Now, I was given some intel where the people who gave me the intel told a city it was going to happen. They didn't know where, but they wanted me to get that out so that CC members in particular who, did keep away from that area. And that bomb actually went off in the city that I named, and other people had named completely different cities. And that was a game changer because suddenly people thought, hang on, how did Simon get that right? How did he have the right intel? And what happens is that people often focus on you and all they want is the latest intel. And I've always said, Steve, that we mix spirituality with intel, because intel on its own is just intel. We need to have an understanding of life and we need to empower ourselves. So I've always tried to mix the two. But there is going to be things happening in people's face. And I just finishing up, Steve, I don't necessarily think people need it for themselves. It's because they're under pressure from their mum and dad or their brother or their sister or their partner who says, you're delusional, you're crazy. And so lots of patriots or lots of spiritual people want this to happen so they can turn to their best friend and say, see, I told you so, I'm not mad. And that's coming. I promise you that's coming. But I'll just quickly finish up before we move on. I'm not convinced, and this might not go down too well, I'm not convinced that when President Trump returns to office, and he's going to, that he would want to do a full term. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he'll come back because he needs to come back, and then I think he'll go. And there's a lovely little video going around on YouTube, I think, and it's got all of the patriots, people who are officially dead, like JFK Jr. and Princess Diana and Prince, and they're all been, in a tasteful way, they're sort of been CGI'd to a song. And then at the very end of this song, President Trump comes on and he says, I'm too damn old for all this. Now, people will laugh, but the person who's created that is deeply involved in the intel. And what I want to interpret that for people is that's not a warning, but it's advice to you, to the audience, that when President Trump does return, he won't do very long at all, maybe 120 days. And then he's going to say, I did what I had to do. I am now endorsing a particular individual. This individual has my endorsement. And then what President Trump will do is become one of the key advisors. And they will going to create, I believe, a new president, a new vice president, and a key advisors. And I think Trump will be one of those key advisors. So don't say, oh my God, President Trump, look, he's done his job. He did what he did. No one else could have done it. Those 4 years, I think he'll come back, have an inauguration, thank everybody, do a little bit in office and hand over. And we're beginning to see that now with people in the know dropping stuff in social media. So
as that happens, it's going to be, whether it's 1 day or 1 hour with Trump coming back, it'll be restoring the Constitution. It's going to restore us to something that we were born to support. Liberty is available to every human being everywhere. And now we can feel it. We can feel the manifestation happening. What's your thoughts on Haiti right now? Any insight into black hat, white hat maneuver down there? Or what do you think it is? Just another false flag of, hey, folks, pay attention over here while I try to get Congress to cram this bill down the throats of Americans?
At first sight, when anybody gets kidnapped or anything happens, we know when the bad guys are involved because it's always about a ransom. They're desperate. Bad guys are desperate to get money in. They are absolutely starved of cash now, and they will do anything to try to ransom or obtain money. So often when people are captured, then like that, groups of missionaries or priests, whatever it is, and a ransom is asked for, then if you trace it back, there's always the cabal at the back of that with their lackeys doing it. I haven't had enough intel. I've been so focused on the United States and Europe and Australia and New Zealand that I haven't had any intel on that. If I said I see it as a sideshow, that is not a nice thing to say because it would upset the people or families or friends. But what I mean is, from the game playing out, the answer to it, the resolving of it, will not actually be resolved in Haiti or anywhere else. It will only be resolved in the United States. So action and activity that takes place in the United States of America will resolve that. And 99% of issues across the globe are not resolved in the country of origin. They're resolved in the United States of America. So issues in Israel between Israel and Syria or Israel and Egypt, it isn't the answer there. The answer's in America. So that's why I focus on the US, not because I'm deaf to anyone else, but I know that's where we can get things moving.
Fantastic. Well.